Over the past few weeks, we've been trending in this range, and it essentially comes down to three levels, right? We have the upper level, the middle, and then we have that bottom tier, which is really the line in the sand that determines whether we're bullish or bearish. If we break that line, that's where everything kind of falls apart. So when in regards to the Nasdaq 100, the S&P 500, whether you're day trading, scalping, whatever it may be, these are going to be the levels you need to watch. And I'm going to tell you where I see us going over the next few days and overall weeks based on where we're at and based on the fundamentals and the technicals. Let's get to it. I immediately want to jump into these charts and go over exactly where we're at. Now, when we zoom in, getting a major look at where we're at, you can see here on the Nasdaq. We're gonna start with the Nasdaq, then move into the then the SPY and the S&P 500 specifically. Sorry, I can't speak today. When we look at where we're at, the major level we're watching, the one I said the line in the sand, it's 12.95, right? You've heard me talk about it enough here on the past few days and weeks. Until this level breaks, in my opinion, there's zero reason to play the short side. Now, hear me out because I'm going to explain exactly why. But as we can see, basically going back into, March 30th, we've trended above this for almost 20 days now. Now, we break it down a little bit further. We zoom in a little bit more. We look at the trend line, right? We were kind of making lower highs for a little bit, pushing down. We broke above 1 and 2. We bounced perfectly there once again on the day. Now, we get a little bit of a better look. And it's worth mentioning when we look at some of the other futures, that Nasdaq was the only one getting pain today, specifically tech. Now, as we zoom in a little bit more, what's happening? Now, we can see here on the 2 hour that at first we were pushing down, getting rejected from 13.2 down to lows of 12.95, 1, 2, 3. Then what happened? Okay, now we're making higher lows. Clearly, since we've established that low there at a little bit under 12.95 and bouncing back up from last Wednesday, we're broken out of this range, came back down, but ultimately we're bouncing in a higher level. So if I say anything right now, it's this. As of now, we're looking more bullish than we have the past week and a half, 2 weeks, based on price action, based on futures. Now, again, let's take a really quick dive into some of these other ones, right? The Dow and the S&P. Now, the Dow, showing you here. Again, I'm not making this up. Go look, do your own DD, right? Use me as an indicator, but at the end of the day, do your own research, do your own DD. And as you look here, even prior to March 30th, we continue to make higher highs and higher lows. Pushing. Now, one thing that we can identify that's happened since basically the beginning of the year, the leader in the market, or essentially since the beginning of February, end of January, the leader in the market has been tech. It has been the Nasdaq. That's been the strength here in the market. So we have to understand that. That's the one thing that we need to be able to identify and look at very clearly. Jumping into ES, looking at what's happening here. March 30th, that was our high on the Nasdaq. Since then, you continue to push up, making higher highs and higher lows on ES. So what have we established so far? Just from a broad, viewpoint, looking in, from the top-down approach, from higher levels, what have we established? That the Nasdaq has cooled down a little bit since the beginning of, April. But overall, the other indexes have been playing catch-up, pushing up even stronger. Okay, so what does this let me know? What does this kind of help me identify? Because if we look at what happened, why Nasdaq ran more than anything else in March was really during that bank crisis issue that we had. So we had a lot of pain in the banks drawing a lot of those markets down with the S&P and the Dow. And then really tech just took off, went just bananas, went crazy. Nvidia, AMD, we had, Tesla to a certain extent. We had a lot of these names, Microsoft, Google, they had really nice runs, Meta, and they're still running. Okay. But when we look at them, I think it's okay to look at where we're at here. And I want to look at this viewpoint so people can get a viewpoint of you don't necessarily just move straight up, stare. Sometimes you'll get an index that will consolidate while the others continue to show strength. So even though over the past week and a half, I continue to say bullish as long as we're above that key level on Nasdaq and above 4,100 here on ES, you're still moving up on names like Apple, Microsoft, Meta, all these other names continue to rally, continue to push. So even though you might not be seeing higher highs being established on NQ, it kind of tells you something that's happening behind the scenes with those equities as well. What's one thing that we always look for? If the market's getting a big reaction in either direction, up or down, I always look to see what equities are doing behind it. For instance, if the S&P 500 is rallying hundreds of points, right, to the upside, or, the SPY is going from 400 to 420, I'm interested in what's happening with the biggest names in the SPY. specifically, usually Apple. If Apple's not moving with the SPY, typically there's an underlying issue and it could possibly be a trap. But on these breakdowns, we've actually seen a lot of these names make higher highs, right? And higher lows as well. Microsoft being one of them, continuing to push up, even though Nasdaq is holding back, and Microsoft is pulled by the S&P as well. I'm not saying it's only pulled by Nasdaq, but I do want this to be known, right? And so we look here, NVIDIA, which is a big Nasdaq name, and coincides perfectly with that March 30th up here as well, consolidating with the Nasdaq, right? And so it's kind of setting you up for what's happening here. But there's a main thing that we've been talking about here on the channel, and it was something that could spark a bull run here. It could really spark another breakout to that next target on Nasdaq, which is 13.7, and it was banks. And a lot of people, it's interesting. When things don't go our way, we tend as humans, as people, to make excuses. I personally try to step up and be as transparent as possible and say I'm right or I'm wrong. Which brings me to this point. I ask you to consider doing two things here on the channel: liking and subscribing. Every single day I make videos for you, so you are prepared. Good, bad, ugly, I don't care. And then on the weekends, I try to make an educational video for you as well to try to teach you along the way. We also have a lot of educational stuff on our website now, so go check that out. It's absolutely free. Make sure you check it out. Also, too, our Instagram, the link is down below. We also have the newsletter, which was Sunday. But I'm going to tell you right now, we're having a big giveaway right here. So this is just so you know, go check it out. No strings attached. We're giving away a year membership in Discord, absolutely free, $100 cash, and the monitor. That's all going to be to one person, not to multiple, just to one. So it's basically like a lotto. So make sure you go follow Instagram, do what it says to do. It's really easy. Winner will be picked April 21st. But when we get back into the market, people like to just make excuses. And I've been a victim, or I've been guilty of doing that, right? I've been guilty of doing, not a victim. I've been guilty of doing that. But it's important as a trader that you start to take responsibility for what you do, and whether you're right or whether you're wrong. And usually when I'm right, I try to say, well, what exactly was I projecting? How can I do this again, right? It's not more of me putting up the belt and saying, yeah, we like to have fun here on the channel. But at the end of the day, we like to make ourselves better every single day. My goal is to get 1% better a day, right? 0.5% better a day, constantly getting better and building and building and building. That's my end goal every single day here, right? I want you to succeed. I want you to kill it. I hope my plays are right. I hope some of the stocks, I'm going to mention a stock here in a little bit that I love right now, but I love all these plays and I hope they do great. But at the end of the day, my goal is to get better and better and make myself a better trader every day. That's all I care about, right? And so when we look at this, everyone was saying, oh, you have to short, banks are going to do bad, the banking crisis is going to continue to happen. But when we look at what's happening from the Fed and we look at what's happening in general, we have to be able to look at the market from a viewpoint of saying, well, the Fed's going to continue to bail out these banks if they have to, and bank earnings continue to do well. And what was the sector that was holding the SPY down? When we look at the SPY, when it got really hit during that bank crisis, what happened, right? It was XLF. And if we look at XLF, what's been happening here, right? You can see, right? Straight shot back here, beginning of March, comes down, bottoming out here, kind of upticking now. And then over the past 3 or 4 days, been just tracking to the upside. Well, this is because of earnings. That's why it's going parabolic to the upside. We look at JP Morgan. We look at Bank of America's tomorrow. We look at Citigroup. They killed it. We look at all these banks and they're destroying it. They're doing extremely well. Okay? And that's what's happening. XLF is bouncing back. Now, KRE is still not doing that good, but KRE isn't a major holding in the SPY in comparison to XLF. Okay? The two biggest movers typically in SPY are XLF and SOXX, or just semiconductors in general, whichever one you want to look at. But semiconductors and banks. So when you have something like this that's drawing the whole SPY down, and the SPY is still trying to get some upside, even though this is such a weak sector right now, what happens when this bounces back? It's similar to what we said if you were dropping and semiconductors would have gave out. You would have probably free fell over 20 points. So you have to understand where you're at and what you're getting. And right now, the upside opportunity on these banks is clearly, I mean, you have room to the upside. Giving you a quick visual. Schwab, one of my favorite names down here. You could have got it on, I believe it was, April 5th, you were at $49. You could have got it on Friday near $50. I continue to say I love this name. It's doing well. They beat her on earnings today again. Wells Fargo, what's happening here? You were down at 36 on April 5th. You're all the way up at 41 now. Okay, we'll go a little bit deeper. Citigroup, what's happening here? April 5th, common theme here, 45. Lowe's, you're at 42. Now you're at 49, trucking up. JP Morgan, investment banks, a little bit of a different name here, but look what's happening. 128 underneath the 200 SMA, flying up to 140 now. What about Goldman Sachs? What's happening here? Boom. They're all killing it. They're all bouncing back aggressively. Bank of America is tomorrow, and Bank of America it's definitely looking good, but I will say Bank of America is at a big level right here. But the common denominator here is you're seeing a major bounce back in this specific area of the market. And if tech starts to play catch up, you have to be looking or expecting for the ES to break out of this, which as of right now, no one's talking about it, but ES looks incredible. You want to keep rallying up to 4,200. It looks like you're going to get the $4,200 test this week, like we have been anticipating here on the channel. So again, that's what we're looking at. We're trying to prepare ourselves and also give ourselves the best opportunity. That's why I always say be patient. But again, the biggest thing I can say right now, there is zero reason to go short unless you're like scalping on very small time frames, unless you break 4,100 on ES, and on Nasdaq you break below that 12.95 region. We continue to say the same thing. If y'all think that I've lied, if you think I've misspoke, then I will come clean about it. And I recommend that you guys always try to, hold us accountable here on the channel, right? If you think that we haven't been accountable, comment down below. I would love to, one, try to restore faith with you, most of all. But again, we want to make sure that we're holding ourselves to a standard here, okay? As transparent as possible. It's not about views are down, I don't care. It's about giving you the best content every single day. So again, let's go over some stock names that we're liking. First one up, it's my biggest one. So on Twitter, if you're not following, I'll give you a viewpoint really quick here on Twitter. Going over here, I try to post as much as possible here on Twitter throughout the day and just things I like. So 50 minutes ago, an hour before basically market closed, AMD screaming value for me. Now, when we look at AMD, let's discuss ultimately where we're at. Now, we had that kind of pennant here on the 2 hour. We broke down. We came right down into our demand level here. Now, what I will say is you did break demand. Okay, you can say you broke below your demand at basically like 89 flat. Okay, but that being said, great recovery so far. I will say that buyers did start to show up. What I will say also, when we look at this chart, what gets me excited, what gets me going, what gets the loins churning, right? I want to say, you got a little bit, we'll draw this out just a little bit right there. As you can see, going over here as well. I don't have this drawn out on TrendSpider. It's on my trading view, but you can still see it. And I don't like to just force wedges or anything like that. But again, I just want to highlight where you're at and kind of how you're moving. You kind of got a little bit of a descending wedge, dropping down, boom, coming into demand. I will say not the best bounce out of demand originally, but you're still bouncing off of previous swing highs from February 2nd. Okay. Very, very strong behavior. And then when we get a better look, what's happening in some of the names that we like here, NVIDIA bouncing very well. I've been talking to Jay about this a lot today. NVIDIA is one of those names I kind of love. Really watching how it's respecting this level down here. Bouncing out of it. It's not an exact demand, so don't quote me on it. You have to go a little bit smaller time frames to see it, but you're still bouncing at this level. We mentioned this on Friday, right? Giving you a visual just to, highlight what we were talking about here on Friday. I like to be as transparent as possible. I ended up buying some AMD calls, but guess what? I started buying NVIDIA stock on Friday morning, right? Near lows, 266, 265-ish, right? I was buying some. Also, what did we get there? We also mentioned the 270 calls from last week. Those went up, crazy amounts very quick. So we still like those names. They're performing very good. This is exactly what we want to see from this behavior here. And so what we're doing with AMD, in my opinion, it's more of a value play. So I think it's just overall stock is really great in it because you're playing it with stops below 88.5 roughly swing lows right now, but you also have tremendous upside back to 95 towards 100 as well. You love AMD, great opportunity. TSM earnings Thursday, I believe also. So you love what's happening there. Number two, this is a more conservative name here, but I love Apple. Apple. Let me tell you, this thing, it's a beast. It really is. You can see this trend line from the top where we've been, how we've been kind of responding here. You're at this range right now. I think Apple wants to continue. They mentioned what they're doing with their savings accounts now with the Apple Card. And then, honestly, today, we look at the price action. Where are you at? How are you moving? Really quick, let's go to the 15 minutes so you can see. I just want to show you how you're just kind of trending here, guys. Look at how this is just trending at these lows down here, bouncing and making higher highs or higher lows as well here. You're trying to push up. You're trying to get some love. I think you have some resistance at 166, 167. But I think we have to be watching Apple, especially with the breakout opportunity with banks and the S&P 500. I think people are kind of sitting back. They're looking at Apple where it's at. I still think it looks incredibly strong, even with days of weakness. Today, we dropped almost 100 points, a little bit over 100 points on the Nasdaq. And guess what? Apple did nothing. It held up like a tank. This is what you want to see from these strong names, right? You saw a great rebound from Microsoft as well. But these are what you want to see here. Okay, a little bit deeper, one more name for you. Last but not least, Tesla. I think this thing just keeps coming up on our list. I'm going to tell you right now. I love Tesla where it's at here, okay? I'm going to tell you. I think you have room up to potentially, you can lower that down just a little bit to like 91-ish, but I'm still going to tell you here. Tesla above 87, I think just has strength. If you could hold above 187, 188, you have a clear shot to push back up. Today, you got a fake breakout. It was disgusting. I almost traded this thing in the Discord today. Thank God I didn't. You got a breakout, you mounted, pushed up, and then, obviously fell down with NQ. If Tesla can hold above 188, you look great. You do have earnings coming in on Wednesday. So I will say, be aware of that. Don't YOLO to any positions and maybe wait till after earnings. But I still believe Tesla looks really, really good. And you're going to say, Tyler, what do you think about earnings? Honestly, Tesla's earnings are usually lackluster and they don't do too much. So I'm not too worried about them in general. I'm more just watching the price action and how we're moving from here. Elon Musk did, really go on a tangent about his new AI and what he's trying to do with that, which also fueled NVIDIA's bounce. So you could see that playing into a factor with Tesla and what they're going to try to work on with that, with the earnings call. But again, I don't like playing Tesla earnings, not my favorite thing to do. But I will say a lot of opportunity on Tesla after earnings. One of the big names I'm trying to watch. Favorite name is AMD right now. It's a little bit risky, but again, I love where it's at. I love the opportunity, and I just like the risk reward. It fits right into my scheme.